And welcome to what I was going to say another Wednesday night, but as we can see through the windows, it's still quite bright out for our ending of spring, heading into summer here. But good to be with you this evening, according to the clock, 7:10. And so we are in our Wednesday night series doing an after Bible study, looking at Bible patterns in modern times, getting some thoughts courtesy of Messianic Rabbi Jonathan Cahn and his writings. And I want to encourage you all and remind you all, as we bring out his thoughts and look at scriptures and some events and see some potential connections, maybe not, always feel free to disagree with him. I'm not in line with him lockstep on every little thing. And always feel free to disagree with me too. Come to different convictions. Our focus is to look at scriptures we don't normally spend time on, and consider that there might be more spiritual behind the scenes happening to what's happening around us and has been for the last little bit. So with that, what I like to do on Wednesdays, as you know, is at the very least open with scripture and end in scripture. So our opening scripture will be back in Genesis chapter 50. We'll be there for the beginning and the end of tonight's sessions. We will probably have two separate recording sessions, and then that'll be it for the breakups. We'll be continuing on from here pretty much solidly. Genesis chapter 50, looking at after the death of Jacob / Israel in Egypt, and his burial outside of Egypt, and the brothers being concerned now. It had been 40 years since they had betrayed and sold off Joseph, and they're worried if he's still holding a grudge. Now that Dad's out the way, what's he going to do? So we'll be picking up in Genesis chapter 50. Specifically, let's refresh. We could pick up in verse 18. So the brothers were worried, so they said, hey, Dad said not to hold a grudge against us, but let's pick up in verse 18. His brothers, let's just go ahead and read it. Verse 15, we'll do the paragraph. Genesis 50, verse 15, when Joseph's brothers had seen that their father was dead, they said, what if Joseph holds a grudge against us and pays us back in full for all the wrong which we did to him? Again, 40 years ago. So they sent instructions to Joseph, saying, your father commanded us before he died, saying, this is what you shall say to Joseph. Please forgive, I beg you, the offense of your brothers and their sin, for they did you wrong. And now, please forgive the offense of the servants of the God of your father. And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. Then his brothers also came and fell down before him, just like his dreams. How about that? And said, behold, we are your servants. But Joseph said to them, verse 19, do not be afraid. For am I in God's place? Verse 20, as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring about this present result, to keep many people alive. So therefore do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your little ones. So he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. So some thoughts on this from Jonathan Cahn's book, the Book of Mysteries, a book of 365 devotionals for a year. Here's some thoughts on this. So, what was meant for harm turning out to be brought around for something good. Back in the year 70, AD 70, the armies of Rome, under the command of the general Titus, destroyed the land of Israel and the ancient nation of Judea. To commemorate the end of Israel, along with other Roman victories, a monument was built and called the Arch of Titus. It was completed, I think, in the year 81. Inside the arch was carved an image of Israel's destruction, the carrying away of the sacred vessels from the Temple of Jerusalem. And that's actually on the arch. It's still standing to this day. And when we were going through that early part of the, towards the end of the Bible history and into past the Bible, showed images of that. 2,000 years later, the Roman Empire lay in ruins, but the nation of Israel was miraculously raised from the dead. The new nation needed a symbol. You know where they found it? Israel's national seal on the Arch of Titus. So by building a monument to seal in stone the destruction of Israel, the Romans ended up doing the very opposite. They preserved in stone the image of Israel's sacred golden 7-branch menorah for 2,000 years. And the image from the arch became the national seal of Israel, the symbol of its resurrection. The menorah, the symbol of God's light overcoming the darkness. So what does the Arch of Titus reveal? Not only can you not stop the purposes of God, but like with Joseph and his brothers, he will even use that which is against his purposes. God wasn't in what the brothers did, but he used it. He will use what is against his purposes to cause his purposes to be fulfilled. So I thought that was pretty spiffy. So when things happen that we know God's not okay with, nothing's out of God's hands. Sometimes he chooses in his sovereign, all-knowing will that the best thing is to let some things play out, because what's happening in the moment is not the end. And as we know, Romans 8:28 beautifully famously says, "This we know, God causes all things to work together for good." All things, including the bad things, including things he doesn't like, causes all things to work together for good, but that's not the end of the verse. For those who love God, those who are called according to his purpose. So the more we draw close to God, even the bad, he will bring about to a good end. So it's okay to admit the bad hurts, of course. Joseph was hurt. Job was hurt. It's okay to acknowledge that. We're not bad Christians if we do. But we don't end there. We don't sit there. We don't stay and wallow there, because God is faithful and always brings things about gloriously as only he can. So any reactions or thoughts on that little bit?
Well, to me, it would be hard, that's me, to...
Oh, you're not alone.
To do what Joseph did. Because his brothers were not genuine.
Oh, no.
No, they were scared to death. And they made up, to me, they made up.
Yes.
Dad said to do this.
Yes.
And Joseph just, I don't, that'd be hard.
Yeah. It's one of those things where, how do I want to put this? Because we know when our kids are sorry they got caught, not sorry for what they did. We've all been there as parents. But in the case of Joseph's brothers, as you read the whole thing, the whole account, you go back and you see when Joseph, as vizier, is not revealing himself to them and he's challenging them, he hears them arguing amongst themselves. See, we shouldn't have done this. And one of them says, I told you, didn't we hear him crying from the pit when we were sitting there having our lunch? And but we should have done this. So there was a recognition and a regret that they were suffering consequences. They connected the dots, that they were suffering the consequences for what they had done. And when Joseph revealed himself the first time, he said, God meant this for good, to bring about a great revival, a great deliverance. And so that was when he first revealed himself to them. And now he's basically repeating what he told them again. They just had a human moment of fear once Daddy was gone. Oh crud, is Joseph still going to be cool like he was before, like he's been these 40 years? Or is the loss of Dad going to affect Joseph to where now he's going to lash out? So yeah, they acted in fear, and they didn't need to trump up that story about, Dad said, there's a bigger picture than their human frailties. They're bigger human than their failures, bigger, there's something bigger at stake than their fear. And that was Joseph being a type of Christ, a foreshadowing of Christ, recognizing God's own deliverance of himself first and foremost. Joseph had to be delivered so that they could be delivered. So Joseph, recognizing his own grace in his life of God, freely we receive, freely give. He is under Pharaoh, he was number 2 man in Egypt, so he had goodness to spare, had blessings to spare, and he recognized who was the provider of that. He even told Pharaoh, it's not in me, just like Daniel told the king. It's not in me as far as the interpretation here, it belongs to God. So yeah, it's hard on our own humanity, but when we look to God's blessing in our own lives and his grace for our failures and shortcomings, it's easier to be gracious toward others as we keep that in mind. But it's still easier said than done. You're absolutely right, Brother Clay. And I maybe would have been tempted to say, oh, come on, guys, Dad didn't say that, but you don't have to, don't worry, you're good, we're good, it's all forgotten, right? Water under the bridge, God's good, yeah. Exactly. So, If nothing else, let's dive into our first section of recording here, and we are looking at, in our Bible patterns in modern times, as I get my screen share going here, we are winding down the year 2023, heading into 2024. That's the one I want. There we go. So, wrapping up 2023, we are going to, let's see, when we last left 2023, we were here with Halloween, and so we will pick up from there to the end of the year. Start slideshow, and let's go. So this is something that wasn't in any of Jonathan Cahn's books. He didn't talk about it separately, but this is something that happened, and I shared it at the time. December 17th of the year 2023, this happened. Lightning strikes St. Peter statue on Pope Francis's birthday, and the internet lights up as a result of it. Well, there's a little more to it. Not only was it his birthday, but on Sunday, December 17th, 2023, lightning literally pulverized the key and halo of the statue of St. Peter, who, again, they look to as the first pope. Interesting, the key and the halo, located on the facade of the Sanctuary of Our Lady of the Rosary of San Nicolas, north of Buenos Aires, Argentina. Now, but let's see, there's a part I wanted to see, where it mentions, let's see, that's it, maybe it's the next one. No, there's something in here where it mentioned, let's see, forgive me, let's see. So it happened on his birthday. Here we go. Catholic author Taylor Marshall commenting that the lightning not only happened during his birthday, one day before the publication of the controversial document, Fiducia Supplicans, but is also in his home diocese. He was Archbishop and Cardinal of Buenos Aires. So remember the Pope that had come from South America? Yeah. But the day before the publication of the controversial document, Fiducia Supplicans. Well, what is this controversial document on the next day? Let's go to the next day, December 18th, with this controversial document. Doctrinal declaration opens possibility of blessing couples in irregular situations. With the declaration Fiducia Supplicans, issued by the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith, approved by Pope Francis, it will be possible to bless same-sex couples, but without any type of ritualization or offering the impression of marriage. The doctrine regarding marriage does not change, and the blessing does not signify approval of the union. So you kind of see a needle being threaded there? Yeah.
So why are they blessed?
Yeah. I'm just reporting the facts.
Yeah. They might as well just sneeze.
Yeah. So these are things that happened. The statue was struck, and the key and the halo were disintegrated, and then it was on the eve of this being issued here. And so to clarify, it wasn't the Catholic Church sanctioning these things. It was that you could still bless them without sanction. So, yeah, so they're striking a balance there. So that happened. Continuing on from there. So this brings us to a couple days later in December of 2023. And so we will be picking up with Jonathan Cahn's new book, The Avatar, The Return of the Ancients and the Future of America. Looking at the templates, we've discussed how with the legacy of Ahab and Jezebel through their son Jehoram and their daughter Athaliah, they're all from the nation of Israel. Well, Jezebel was from Phoenicia. Ahab married her, a foreigner, and she brought her in, and their kids. Well, their daughter Athaliah, as they're all in Israel, she went over and married the prince of Judah, Jehoshaphat's son Joram, who would be sitting on the throne of David in the temple there in Jerusalem. So God rose up Jehu to take them all out and get a clean slate going. So, and we're seeing these play out in our modern times with modern human beings in our present day carrying out the templates that were filled out back then. And so what we have is with Jehu. So we have, as I've mentioned before, just real quick running down the line, Ahab and Jezebel, template loosely being fulfilled by President Bill and Hillary Clinton. Again, not hyper-focusing on individuals, not everything's in lockstep identicalness, but there's enough of the template being lived out and played out to where we see the scriptures coming to life and being replayed, and it gives us a sense when we remember what we went through during these different times of what the Lord's people were going through as it was happening to them. So just because we see some things happening doesn't mean it's the end of the world. Similar things happened thousands of years ago and everyone's still here. But be aware as things are, of course, heading to a direction. So Ahab and Jezebel, Bill and Hillary Clinton, their spiritual children after them, their son Jehoram from the Bible, his template filled out by President Barack Obama, their daughter Athaliah, her template filled out by Vice President Kamala Harris, and then her marrying over to Jehoshaphat's son Joram, Joram's template being fulfilled by President Joe Biden, and then Jehoram's son Ahaziah, his template being fulfilled by Hunter Biden. We've looked at these different things. So Jehu being raised up to offset all of them, you guessed it, Donald Trump, fulfilling the Jehu template. So December of 2024, as we're seeing these things played out, Jehu was not a politician, but a fighter, commander of soldiers. He would come to the throne not by inheritance, but by warfare. Never in American history was a campaign for the presidency so much a fight, so much a battle, if not a war, as that of 2024. Y'all remember just 2 years ago, a year and a half ago? Which would bring the American Jehu back to the White House. So, Jehu, outsider, he had the whole establishment aligned against him, right? The kingship, the government, all its powers and the machinery of state, the ruling class, cultural elites, the priesthood of Baal and the gods, every major institution of the land. So it would be for the American Jehu. No major presidential candidate in American history had so many forces, so many institutions, organizations, movements, and strategies so arrayed against him and aimed not only at keeping him from the White House, but seeking his imprisonment, if not his total destruction. So where are we going with that? Well, our first tidbit of this comes on December 18th of 2023. Oops, not that. My lie, it's 2 days later. We just did that one. December 20th of 2023. What do we have here? December 20th of December 20th of 2023, we have this. The legal war waged against him was so massive and in the eyes of many so biased that it would be called lawfare. Well, instead of warfare, lawfare. A war waged by weaponizing the legal realm. And here's the headline: the lawfare against Donald Trump is increasingly farcical. All the things that were being thought of. So that was starting around that time. And as I go, feel free to chime in with any reactions or thoughts or questions as we dust off these things. We'll be doing some review of some things we've talked about before, like the lightning strike with the Pope and all that stuff. So what else do we have from here moving forward? That wraps up 2023. We're now into 2024, and we will go back to Scripture to 2 Chronicles chapter 21. We read this recently, but we'll refresh it here. 2 Chronicles chapter 21. We'll pick up in verse 16, and we'll go down further than we did last time. We'll go from 16 to the end of the chapter. 2 Chronicles 21:16. Then the Lord stirred up against Jehoram. Remember, this is Jehoshaphat's son who married Athaliah, daughter of Ahab and Jezebel. The Lord stirred up against Jehoram the spirit of the Philistines and the Arabs who bordered the Ethiopians, and they came against Judah and invaded it, and carried away all the possessions found in the king's house, together with his sons and his wives, so that no son was left him except Jehoahaz, also known as Ahaziah, the youngest of his sons. Let me pause here. So we've seen that same passage applied to Israel was invaded under Biden's watch, just as Israel was invaded here under Jehoram's watch. the nation of Judah was. Sadly, tragically, Joe Biden lost a few of his family members in a car accident and was left with his younger son, Hunter, just as Jehoram was left with his younger son, Jehoahaz or Ahaziah. But now let's go further, verse 18. So after all this, the Lord struck him in his intestines with an incurable sickness. Now it came about in the course of time, at the end of 2 years, that his bowels came out because of his sickness, and he died in great pain. And his people did not make a funeral fire for him, like the fire for his fathers. He was 32 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem for 8 years. And he departed with no one's regret. And they buried him in the city of David, but not in the tomb of the kings. So, there was invasion of the homeland on his watch, an incursion into the homeland on his watch, and when his time was gone, he wasn't missed. And not much fanfare there. So that was Jehoram. How does President Biden follow that template in the beginning of 2024? Let's see here. Answer that on page 127. Right here. Oh, this is pulling up. So here is a report from the from Congress's Committee on Oversight. The wrap-up. Biden administration's policies have fueled the worst border crisis in U.S. history. Here's what Jonathan Kahn shares about this. In the reign of King Jehoram, foreign peoples living just beyond the border of his kingdom crossed over those borders to infiltrate the land. That's what we just read. From the extent of their penetration, as evidenced by a hostile incursion recorded in Scripture, it appears Jehoram did little or nothing to stop it. He was either unable or unwilling. As a result, the incursion of foreigners would reach as far as the nation's capital, Jerusalem. The issue of foreign peoples crossing over the nation's borders would define Biden's days in power. During the Biden years, the number of illegal immigrants crossing the nation's borders reached unprecedented levels. Millions were now illegally entering the land. Many were stunned by the president's lack of response while millions crossed the nation's southern border. But now we go a little further. But those who crossed the borders of Jehoram's kingdom, what we just read, did not do so simply to get in. They came to take the kingdom's riches, its goods, and its people. They took captives. We know from other scriptures they profited from their captives. Today, it would be called human trafficking. So too, in the days of the American Jehoram, the crossing of borders would lead to an explosion in human trafficking. In one study, it was found that about 60% of Latin American children, that's 3 out of every 5, 60% of Latin American children who set out to cross the border alone or with smugglers would be forced by their smugglers or by those who had likewise crossed the border into the sex trade, child pornography, or drug trafficking. So the days of Jehoram's kingship were of retreat, defeat, weakness, crossing of borders, and human trafficking. That was all in the Bible. That's Jehoram. So too were the days of Biden. The biblical account implies Jehoram's rule provoked a growing discontent among his people. So too, Americans would grow increasingly discontent with the presidency of the American Jehoram. As we saw, they didn't, when he went his way, it was without any fanfare. No big hurrah sending him out. So, thoughts or reactions, comments, questions on going through this experience ourselves this time frame, or seeing that line up with what the scriptures say with Jehoram's experience? Think it might be a stretch, or do we think there might be some legitimate things there, or what do we think? How do you feel?
I think it's spot on, and it's amazing the parallel. Yeah, I see it. I told you.
Yeah.
I do. Something I'm kind of not struggling with, but my last week,
Yeah.
my friend Ellen asked me about what were we studying in Bible study at this church, and so I shared with her a little bit about the book, The Avatar. And she says, well, I saw a movie with these blue people in it, and I'm not real sure what Avatar
That is a movie called Avatar, but it's not the same one.
And so I kind of explained to her what Avatar means, and at that time, beyond that, the only thing I did was to talk about the Santeria.
Yes.
God.
Yes.
That there are idols that.
In Cuba, yes.
I was trying to make the connection about avatars and the false gods.
Yes.
And the Santeria. So that's where I went.
Sure.
She let the matter drop. So I don't know if she wants to know more or not. So I just want to I hope to have a good way of feeling out, like how far to go.
Well, feel free to send her links from the YouTube on these and tell her that Eric loves questions.
Yes, okay.
He even enjoys when people have different opinions than he does.
I was thinking about that too, and I don't want to put pressure on
Don't want to
her,
push,
but
yeah.
I'm going to just feel her out the next time we talk and see what she says.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate your conviction very much and your desire, and also your respect for your friend. And so this is something that's very, very important when we are wanting to share with people things that, because here we are, what are the two things we don't talk about in polite company?
Religion and politics.
Religion and politics. And here we are. So again, if you remember, it's been a while, but I had an image up on the screen where on the bottom, really big, I had the spiritual, the picture of a dove. Above that, a little smaller, I had economic with the dollar sign. Then a little bit above that, and much smaller, I had a Capitol building that said politics. The foundation is the spiritual. The spiritual and spiritual motivations are all after the economics, because economy is how you make things happen. Whatever you want, anything you want to have happen, you need money to do it. So everyone's after the money. Then once you have the money, then you push through your politics to find. So, but it all starts with a spiritual foundation. So, very important that that's where our focus is. But I half joke about the religion and politics things as far as conversations go, because here we have a double whammy of offending people we're trying to share with. We could offend them regarding religion, and we can offend them regarding politics. We don't want to offend, period. Now, we don't shy away from truth. We respect freedom and respect convictions. We don't shove it down people's throats. And I, again, respect your conviction about that, about not going overboard with it. So we will definitely continue to pray for all of us for discretion and discernment as there's opportunities. But let's make sure also, and I know this is your heart already with your friend you love very much, that everything we do be done in kindness, speaking the truth in love, and respect. People have a God-given, don't tell an atheist they've got God-given free will. That doesn't go over too well with them. I mean, go ahead and tell them, but the idea is God gives people free will. We respect free will. Again, just like Paul told the Corinthians in 1 Corinthians 5. What do we have to do with judging the world? That's between them and God. We are not, our job, and y'all know this, I want to say it often enough because sometimes it can get forgotten, and I want to make sure none of us forget it here, and no, we don't want to. It is not our job to impose the Bible on the world outside. The world outside is not beholden to the Bible. They answer to God for the state of their soul and their spirit, but they haven't. This is a covenant commitment they haven't agreed to, so they're not on the hook for a contract they never signed. It's just a matter of, are they saved or not, and that's all it's a matter of. This is an opportunity, but we have to be careful when we talk about these things, whether we're talking about what happened with the Pope and his declaration and all that stuff. The world is free to do what it wants. Consenting adults, not harming anyone, that's your liberty, that's your freedom under God. Now, are you saved or not? That's all that matters. If you're saved, nothing you do after you're saved is going to take away your salvation. Once saved, always saved. We recognize that. There are things you miss out on by not living the life in covenant fellowship that God would have for us for better quality of life in this life and preparation for the life to come, bridal city kingdom and all that. But, so sorry to chase the rabbit there, but I'm grateful for your conviction and desire, and we will be with you in that same sentiment. So these are important things to know, that there's opportunity for conversations. Sister Carolyn.
What were the scriptures that you read where the people were coming in?
That was 2 Chronicles 21, verse 16. The Lord stirred up against Jehoram the spirits of the Philistines and the Arabs who bordered the Ethiopians. They came against Judah and invaded it and carried away all the possessions found in the king's house. Yeah. So not only was the nation of Israel invaded October 7th of 2023 under Biden's watch, but also the homeland, well, our homeland in America, was invaded, as it was Jehoram's homeland. So there's that. So moving forward into, so this was published January 17th, 2024. So moving on from here, what do we have next? Oh, here's some bonus stuff that we had talked about at the time when it was happening. Spring 2024 may be buzzing with an explosion of more than 1 trillion cicadas for the first time in 221 years. Yeah. Close all those ads. Yeah. The good news is it's only in 2 states, Indiana and Illinois. Yeah. So there's the critters right there. Explosion of those 2 broods overlapping in areas across Indiana and Illinois. So, Tulare, California, not affected. Yeah. What else we got? Oh, and this project was announced on January 24th of 2024. The tallest building in the United States will be built in a city you've probably never been to. The tallest skyscraper in the U.S. to be built in the Midwestern city of less than 1 million, you guessed it, Oklahoma City. So then we had images at the time. It's all archived now, but yeah.
Tornado City.
Yeah! I know they retrofit a lot of buildings here for the earthquakes and stuff, so I hope they're building for that.
But it gets it.
No, that's the difference between the Babylon Bee and Not the Bee. Not the Bee says, this is not satire, this is actually real. That's the whole purpose of their site. Things you would think would be Babylon Bee, but no, this is actually real. Yeah.
They should build it in Death Valley and nothing happens out there.
Yeah. And if they build it from the depth on up, the top will be like ground level for us. So here's a trend from Valentine's Day, February 14th of 2024. The white line is us in that present, and the red line is the crash of 1928 into 2029. So we were following that pattern right up to there with the time this was reported, and I'm very glad we didn't follow it the rest of the way. At least we haven't yet. So this was a year and a half ago. Yeah, less than a year and a half ago. What else we got? Okay, here we go. Moving on to some more new material from the Avatar. So, with all that lawfare that was going on, with the establishment, the kingdom against Jehu, how did that play out, and what was the next phase and the next step? Well, not only was there lawfare happening, but sure enough, February 19th, 2024, how many criminal charges? Oops, no. How many criminal charges is Donald Trump facing, and could he go to jail? Survey says Mr. Trump is currently facing 91 criminal counts in 4 separate prosecutions. 91. Yeah. Here's what Jonathan Kahn shares. A single felony conviction could have led to his imprisonment, but he was charged with a total of 91 felony counts.
They're all trumped up.
They're all trumped up, yes. Yeah, the whole analogy of throwing things on the wall to see what sticks. Yeah, just throwing anything out there to see what they could get. We also have this from March 3rd, moving on into the spring. March 3rd of 2024. Tracking efforts to remove Trump from the 2024 ballot. So, the purple, they challenged his being on the ballot, but the challenge got dismissed. In the orange, Trump was disqualified and was pending an appeal. And in the gray, including California, decision or appeal was pending, and the whiter ones were states that didn't challenge him. So, what's the moral of the story there? Legal challenges were filed to prevent his name from appearing on the ballot in over 35 of America's 50 states. Yeah. So it kind of shows the extent of the stuff that was happening. And we'll end this recording on this right here. Now, let's go to Athaliah, to the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel. Now, as we know, she, from Bible history, will have an attempt to seize the throne and in her case be successful. But how does she do it? And what does this have to do with her modern persona in Kamala Harris? Let's check this out right here. There we go. So Athaliah, won't go to the scriptures for the gory details, but when her son was killed, she was the mom of the king, the king at the time. When Jehu had killed her son, she went and killed her grandkids so that they wouldn't reign, but she would. And then one of her grandkids was hidden by the priest and his wife, and as a child, as a baby, and the queen, Athaliah, reigned on the throne of David for 6 years, the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel, until the boy Joash was raised up to about 7 years old. Then he was declared king, and she was taken out and executed. And he became king at that young age. But scriptures record she arose and destroyed all the royal heirs. You can read this in 2 Kings 11, 2 Chronicles 22:10. Behind those few words was a scene of almost unimaginable evil and horror. Athaliah was a grandmother. She was now murdering her own grandchildren, and presumably her nephews, grandnephews, their cousins, all the royal heirs. She saw them not as her children, but as rivals and threats to her power. The reign of Athaliah would thus begin with the river of blood flowing from her own house. As Athaliah rose to the throne on the blood of innocent children, so did Kamala Harris. That's a statement. What are we talking about here? Her ascent to power was supported by the enthusiastic backing and funding of the nation's foremost abortion organization, Planned Parenthood. And in her attempt to become president, she would make the killing of unborn children the clearest and most salient issue of her campaign. She would become the most brazenly and zealously pro-abortion presidential candidate of any major party in American history. The convention that nominated her for the presidency, we're getting a little ahead of our current state, but you get the idea here, we remember this. The convention that nominated her for the presidency was the most radical in the history of the Democratic Party. It vowed to strike down the Hyde Amendment, and so that taxpayer funds could go directly to funding the killing of the unborn, and to make abortion the law of the land with virtually every restraint removed. Harris vowed that with regard to abortion, she would remove all religious exemptions. If she became president, she would force Christian hospitals to kill unborn children against their will, their conscience, and their God. It was no accident that her running mate, Tim Walz, was the one who accompanied her back when, and this is where we're at in our timeline here, after that little sneak peek ahead. Let me do this here. Right,
Says my bank account's locked. Wait,
don't need any sounds.
just hold and circle the message.
Pause. Nope, don't want to load it. Excuse me, my apologies there. Let's do a refresh. Let's refresh that. When in doubt, refresh. There we go. That's it. Stop. Harris and Walz make unprecedented abortion clinic visit prior to the presidential ticket team-up.
When I look at this picture, I feel failure. I'm failing my wife, my children.
Stop that. And so, as he mentions here, it was no accident her running mate Tim Walz was the one who accompanied her when she became the first vice president to walk through the doors of an abortion clinic. In fact, it was that event that laid the foundation for the Harris-Walz ticket. It all began in an abortion clinic. So, as sitting vice president, she did that and met the Governor Walz there, who would later be her running mate. So, with that, following the Athaliah template on the blood of the children rising to power and claiming your spot in power, the parallel there, no, certainly Kamala Harris was not with her own two hands doing this, but she was promoting it, she was supporting it, she was using any levers of power to continue it and to make it even easier to be taking place. So just on that note, any reactions or thoughts or observations? Yes, Sister Diana.
Yeah, I wanted to mention something that I don't know if everybody is aware of, but there, during the Democratic Convention, there was a bus that I believe Planned Parenthood sent out to go around the city where the convention was being held, and there were abortions performed in the bus, and free abortions and vasectomies.
Mm-hmm. Stay tuned. Yeah. So we can see definitely a departure from the values of the Judeo-Christian faith here, in that direction here, and taking the nation that was founded on Christ in that direction. So we will stop that on there, and we will introduce our next topic in just a moment and do a quickie on that.